Episode 11, New Skill. Even without the help of the system, Quinn could tell the student was obviously hiding his ability. "Come on, what happened to your big balls?" the other student taunted him. "You seem to be playing with them behind your back," Quinn replied. "You weak piece of garbage," the student shouted and came charging forward. Quickly, he slashed his hand out at Quinn. Luckily, Quinn's increased stats allowed him to lift his arm in time to block the attack. However, the student's hand managed to slice right through a part of Quinn's arm, drawing blood. "Damn it," Quinn cursed. HP 8 of 10. Quinn looked at the student, who now had his hands out in view. It appeared that the bully had a transformation ability, yet it seemed to be a weak one, limited to only his hands. The ability had changed his hands to tiger claws, and had hardened his nails. From the cut, deep in his hand, Quinn knew that the nails were sharper than they looked. Suddenly, everything became a little bit more serious for Quinn. The stinging pain he felt on his arm was real. The game-like system had caused him to take things a little too easy. But his pain quickly reminded him that this wasn't a game. He was unsure if he would faint after 4 more hits or if something worse would happen, but he had no intention of finding out anytime soon. The student started to charge at Quinn once again with his claw-like hands. As the student swung his right hand, Quinn managed to duck and threw a punch of his own into the student's stomach. The student staggered. The shock on his face revealed that the power behind Quinn's punch was greater than he had expected. The student maneuvered his way around Quinn, moving quicker than he looked. His claws slashed at Quinn's unprotected back, injuring him once more. HP 6 of 10. "Shut up, I know!" Quinn shouted as he lifted the student using both of his hands by the legs and threw him up against the side of the wall. How did Quinn manage to pick him up like that? Peter wondered. They're roughly the same size and he threw him with ease. Does he really not have an ability? Or did he hide it for some reason? Quinn didn't stop there though. It was important to teach this bully a lesson, otherwise they would just come back for more. Quinn needed to scare him from ever trying to mess with him again. He ran up to the student who was still lying on the floor and kicked him in the stomach with full force. The kick was so hard that it caused the student to cough up a little bit of blood from his mouth. First fight has been completed. 50 EXP received. 70 of 100 EXP. Is he dead? Peter asked, slightly worried. As if on cue, the student started coughing out some more blood. If he attacks you again, he's going to wish he was, Quinn stated with conviction. He was actually quite relieved. He had no idea how the academy might punish him for killing another student. Fortunately, his system had rewarded him the experience points without the need to kill the other student. Then suddenly another message appeared before his eyes. Additional quest reward, skill unlocked, level 1 inspect. Excitement started to fill Quinn's mind as he had finally received his first skill. Quinn was hoping that maybe this would help him figure out what type of ability he had received, but the name of it didn't sound too promising. Inspect? So maybe it can tell me the weaknesses of my opponents? Quinn assumed. Quinn then decided to test his new skill and looked at Peter, who was standing next to him. Unfortunately, Quinn had no idea how to use his skill, but the moment he started thinking about the skill, it had activated on its own, and a screen appeared right next to Peter. Name, Peter Chuck. Race, human. Ability, none. HP, 3 of 5. Blood type, A+. Quinn was shocked, but he was also pleased. The skill seemed to work just by thinking about it. He read through the information that had been given to him, unhappy with the blanked out sections. He assumed it was due to the skill only being a level 1, but still, the information it did give him was quite handy. It told Quinn what type of ability someone else had, which would be very useful in a fight. The same was true for how much health another party had. However, there was one bit of information that Quinn found very strange, and that was the blood type. It was weird for the system to give him information about such a specific thing, and Quinn also wondered how on earth this would ever help him in the future. Quinn then went up to the student who continued to lie on the floor, groaning in pain, and used his new skill on him as well. Name, Kyle Main. Race, human. Ability, transformation. HP, 1 of 8. Blood type, B negative. Quinn, I think we better go. Go before someone comes along, Peter told his friend. Quinn ignored him for the time being. He wanted to find out as much as he could, and who knew when he would get the opportunity otherwise. Checking the status of Kyle allowed Quinn to learn a few new things. The information he was given about the ability of the target was not very specific. There were hundreds of different transformation abilities. The other thing was the HP. It looked like for his victory, he only needed to bring down the student's HP to 1. But Quinn still didn't know if 0 equaled death or not. It could also just mean the person had been knocked out. Right after inspecting Kyle, Quinn received yet another notification. You have received an optional quest. Drink the blood of your victim to absorb a stat point. What the? Is this thing crazy? Quinn thought. Even if he would gain a stat point, there was no way he was going to drink someone else's blood. The very idea of it made Quinn feel sick. Still, when looked to the ground where Kyle had spat out some of his blood, he felt magically drawn to the red liquid. Maybe a little bit wouldn't hurt. No, I shouldn't do it. You're going crazy, Quinn. Stop it. Quinn, Peter called again, only this time he shouted at his friend. Yeah, you're right. The two of them continued to walk down the hallway, but while doing so, Peter noticed that Quinn kept turning his head to look at Kyle on the floor. He must be worried about him. Although he is a mean fighter, seems like Quinn's a nice guy after all, Peter thought as he smiled. If only he knew that Quinn was actually still debating whether to go back and try a bit of the blood after all. Episode 12, A Second Test. As the two continued to walk down the hallway, Quinn started to feel a strange surge through his body. Hey, let's go to the doctor. I'm sure the military must have a healer who can patch that up, Peter suggested, his eyes focused on the cut on Quinn's hand. Good idea, Quinn agreed. You don't have to come with me. I can reach there on my own. It will be a busy day tomorrow, so why don't you head back to the dorm? Although Peter was worried about Quinn, Peter didn't want to stick in the halls for much longer where other students were able to see him. He also had an irrational fear that someone would link them with the injured boy down the hallway. Quinn read the hesitation on Peter's face. Look, don't worry, I'll be fine. I appreciate you looking out for me, Quinn encouraged. It was a strange thing to say, given that he was the one that had gotten injured while saving Peter. He could see the puzzlement on Peter's face, so he gave him an encouraging push towards their room. With that, Peter quickly rushed off and headed back to the dorms, making sure to cover up his wristwatch most of the time as well. He didn't want to stumble into another bully. Quinn, on the other hand, immediately rushed to the nearest boys' toilet just down the hall. When he entered the toilet, his eyes went to his arm, where Kyle's claws had left an ugly cut. Quinn examined his hand closely. Something strange was happening. He could literally watch his arm healing in real time. Though it looked slow, in reality, it was incredibly fast. For someone to be able to actually witness his skin scabbing over and healing was an amazing sight. Quinn had actually felt something strange happening to his body when he was talking to Peter. It was the reason why he had insisted on Peter leaving him alone. If Peter had watched his wound heal, Peter would know for sure that he had an ability, if he did not already suspect that. Quinn waited a few minutes and opened up his status screen. It was as he thought. His HP slowly regained as well. HP 8 of 10. Eventually the wound on his arm and back had healed completely and only the rips on his shirt were left. HP 10 of 10. Your HP has recovered. Your hunger has grown. Does this mean the system uses food to heal my wounds? I guess it makes sense. The energy has to come from somewhere, Quinn thought as he felt himself getting hungry. It was as if he had just missed breakfast or something. When Quinn had the chance, he would get a quick bite to eat. Before Quinn headed back to the dorms, there was one more thing he wanted to do. He wanted to get back to the training room that they had been shown while touring the school. It was getting late, and the students had an early start in the morning, so most of the students had already returned to their dorms. This meant it was the perfect chance for Quinn to head to the training room without anyone seeing him. He finally reached the training room in the academy, a large oval dome-like building with a huge empty space in the middle. At the edges of the room were rows and rows of technological equipment. There were giant mech robots, shooting targets, and things Quinn had no idea what they even did. Still, he hadn't come for those. No, the one thing he was interested in was the power-level testing equipment. Inside the training center, Quinn had also spotted the same machinery that had been used at the testing field. When Quinn entered, the room was unsurprisingly empty. Slowly he made his way over to the testing equipment while walking past all the other sorts of machinery, and finally he stopped just in front of the drum-like level testing machine. It was the same type of model as the one they had used out in the field to test their strength. Unbeknownst to Quinn, Layla had also snuck to the training room before Quinn had entered. She had come to test out her bow and arrow skills. She always practiced at night when she was nervous, and she couldn't help but worry about tomorrow. When she heard the doors to the training room opening, she immediately hid behind one of the giant robots. Suddenly she saw the student walk over in her direction. Then she noticed something. "Isn't that the boy I took the test with? If I remember correctly, he had no ability." Layla recognized him, although she could not recall his name. Layla continued to watch Quinn as he approached the large drum. "Let's see," Quinn said to himself as he circled his right arm to warm it up. He swung his fist back and prepared to hit the drum as hard as possible. When he punched the drum, a number appeared on the drum and slowly started to rise until it eventually stopped at 10. "Seems like I was on the mark," Quinn exclaimed happily. He had come to test his theory about his status screen stats, matching the equipment the school used, and he was seemingly right. Layla, who had been watching from behind one of the robots, also noticed Quinn's new score. Confused and curious, she decided she wanted to find out more about this mysterious student, and would stay hidden to learn more. Quinn then went to the hologram spike machine. Last time Quinn managed to last 10 seconds against the machine before it got too fast for him to dodge the attacks. Since his stats were no longer halved, he figured he would last longer this time. Quinn started the test, weaving and dodging through the spikes. Unlike out in the fields, he felt more agile as the spikes whizzed past him. When the test was done, he lasted exactly 20 seconds. With Quinn having confirmed his results, there was nothing left for him to do but head back to the dorm and wait for the next day to start. Meanwhile, Layla, who had stayed hidden this whole time, had seen everything. She couldn't understand why a student would hide his strength in school. A low power level meant that one would be targeted by others. Layla only had one thought while she looked at Quinn. Maybe there will be a use for him. She decided that from now on, she would keep a close eye on Quinn. Episode 13. School Hierarchy. The next day, at 8 a.m., the students were woken up by the sound of an alarm in the dorm rooms. It was the signal for everyone to get dressed and start the day. Once everyone was ready, they were to head down to the canteen for breakfast. When Quinn woke up, the system was the first thing that greeted him. Daily quest number 2 has been completed. 5 EXP received. 75 of 100 EXP. Quinn was thankful for this convenient way of gaining 5 EXP without actually having to do anything but sleep. Suddenly, a rumbling sound came from his belly. He felt hungrier than he usually was, as if something was biting through his stomach. Must still be from the fight yesterday. The canteen was a large hall that was quite plain. In fact, while walking around the school on his own, Quinn became aware of how plain most of the school looked. Single white walls, no picture frames, just windows every now and again. It was the sleek, modern, clean look that the world had taken. The canteen was filled with large tables that could seat 3 people on each side. There were no set seats in the canteen, meaning students were free to sit wherever they liked. Quinn noticed that low levels sat next to the other low levels, while the high levels sat with the high levels. His school life had just begun, and yet the social norm appeared to have already been established, just like it had been in his old school. While Quinn was waiting in line with Peter and Vorden, a student came late into the queue. He nonchalantly walked past his peers and eventually cut into the line ahead of the rest. Not a single person said a word in protest. The reason for this was simple. The offender had a higher power level than them. Quinn hated these types of actions, but right now there was nothing he could do. Once the 3 of them got their food, they started looking for a place to eat. "Why don't we go over there?" Vorden pointed at an empty spot. "Are you sure, Vorden?" Peter asked. "That's a level 1 area. You don't have to sit with us if you don't want to, right, Quinn?" "Yeah, don't force yourself," Quinn replied. "Quit talking nonsense, you two. We're friends. I don't care about this stupid power level hierarchy going on." The 3 of them then went to sit down with the other lower levels on a table. The area slowly started to fill up, but nobody else had decided to sit at their table. Everyone could see his high power level, so the other low levels wanted to stay away, fearing he would bully them. As soon as they sat down, Quinn started to dig in without any regard for table manners, eating everything that was given to him, even the bits he usually didn't like. "Hey, if you're not going to finish that, do you mind if I take it?" Quinn asked, his eyes on Peter's plate. "Sure, go ahead," Peter said, a bit surprised about Quinn's appetite. Quinn ended up not only eating all of his food, but also the leftovers from his two friends. On top of that, Quinn also had grabbed 8 bottles of water, as he wanted to finish his other daily quest as soon as possible. The last time when he had been in the sun, he had sweated far more than usual, but thanks to the water he drank beforehand, he hadn't felt too dehydrated. If they were to go outside again, then this would be a big help to Quinn. "For a skinny guy, you sure know how to gorge yourself," Borden teased. Although Quinn had clearly eaten a lot, for some reason he still felt a little pang of hunger that wouldn't quite go away. Luckily it was bearable and didn't distract him too much. Daily quest number 1 has been completed. Reward 5 EXP, 80 of 100 EXP. Now there were only 20 points, separating him from his first level up. He could not wait to see what benefits it would bring him. As he thought about the system, he recalled that he had received the Inspect skill as an additional quest reward from his fight yesterday. He turned to Borden and decided to use it on him. Name, Borden Blade. Race, human. Ability, none. HP, 10 of 10. Blood type, O negative. Quinn paused for a second as he read over what he was seeing. For some reason, the system was stating that Borden had no ability. "Hey, Borden, can you still use Aaron's ice powers at the moment?" "Wow, I didn't know you were so interested in me," Borden said as he rubbed the back of his head. "Actually, my ability resets every day, and I haven't touched anyone today. Besides you two, of course, but you two are duds for my ability." They continued to talk for a bit until another alarm notified them that breakfast was over, and that class would start soon. On their way, Peter and Quinn spotted Kyle, who did not look at all as if he had been in a fight, much less lost it. "Do you think you'll tell the teacher what happened?" Peter whispered to Quinn. "I doubt it. It should be too embarrassing for him to admit he was defeated by someone weaker than him. Plus, it would only make him a target if people found out," Quinn whispered back. Their teacher for the day was Dell, the same person who had shown them around the school. The students took their seats, and just like in the canteen, they chose to sit close to those of the same power levels. All but Borden, of course. Borden decided to sit at the back of the class with the level 1s and 2s, between Peter and Quinn. The other students noticed this behavior and quickly started to talk amongst themselves. "What does he think he's doing sitting with those bottom feeders? I saw him sit with them in the canteen as well. Won't this cause a problem for the hierarchy at school? Won't the second-year students start to do something? Yeah, if he keeps breaking the rules, then they will definitely step in." This focus on one's power level wasn't just a school thing. In fact, the school was the perfect example of how their society worked as a whole. With a higher power level, you would be guaranteed better jobs and better pay. The government would support you, while the rest would be forgotten. The ones at the top didn't really have a problem with this kind of system. The people with lower power levels would do anything they asked them to do just to curry favor with them, hoping that one day they could increase their power level. Anyone who tried to upset this power system was usually quickly silenced. It was the primary reason the group known as Pure existed in the first place. They wanted to fight against this system and reestablish dignity for all humans, yet the government had branded them terrorists. Dell coughed loudly to silence the gossiping students so he could start his lecture. It was about the introduction of the school and the Great War. "When we were about to lose the Great War against the Dalki," Dell began, his voice rising to capture the rapturous moment, his eyes blazing. "That was when they came forward. The originals. These humans had kept their abilities hidden for hundreds of years, only passing them down to their family members." He paused and looked around the class to make sure every student was paying attention before he continued. "Thanks to them sharing their abilities with the rest of humanity, we were able to reverse the tide of war and beat back the Dalki. When we talk about an original today, we're either referring to the founders of that ability or a member of one of the groups who have refused to share their abilities with the rest of the world." Dell then suddenly had a serious look on his face. "We might live in a time of peace at the moment, but who knows when the war will start again. That is why you are here." Once the class had finished, it was time for the students to take a break. Borden, Quinn, and Peter headed outside to grab a snack. As soon as Quinn stepped outside, the dreaded message appeared. All stats have been halved. The three of them sat by a nearby bench, and Quinn once again felt weak. Hey, are you alright? You look sick again, Borden asked. Dude, you're sweating like crazy. Yeah, I just get hot easily, Quinn lied. The three of them continued to talk about random things and the experiences they had at their previous schools until a group of 6 male students approached them. Each of them was wearing a black arm badge, indicating that they were second-year students. Looks like the rumors were true, one of the second-year students said. We have some business to discuss with the three of you. Do you mind coming with us? Another added. His eyes dared the trio to refuse the invitation. Episode 14. Unwritten Rules. Quinn, Peter, and Borden were escorted by the second-year students to a separate part of the school. The school was split into different sections, and the second-year building was separate from the first years. As such, second-year students didn't really interact with the first-year students. Should we just run? Peter asked Quinn in a hushed tone. It might just make the situation worse. If they were going to do something to us, they would have waited until we were on our own, Quinn whispered back. They must have intentionally done this in public to make a statement to all the others. After walking for a while longer, they eventually arrived at their destination. It was underneath one of the second-year buildings. There were a few second-year students who were walking past, but otherwise, the place was relatively quiet. We brought them here, Mono, one of the second-year students informed a tall man with brown hair wrapped in a ponytail who had been sitting on the staircase. You guys can leave. Mono waved them off as he stood up from the staircase. The second-year students did as they were told, and quickly left them to be on their own. Some rumors have reached my ears of a high-level student hanging around with a bunch of low-levels. So what? Is it against the rules? Borden stood his ground with confidence. However, Quinn couldn't help but notice this Mono's wristwatch, which displayed the number 6. Mono started to laugh. True, the school might not have a written rule preventing you from associating with their kind, but there are some unwritten rules. Mono then walked over to Quinn. You see, the moment you start treating this trash like they are useful to society, they might start to get a big head. Now that Mono was close enough to Quinn, he tried to use his inspect skill on the older student, but for some reason the status screen was blurry. It looked like the status screen itself was melting, making all the information unreadable. Is it because I'm out in the sun? Quinn wondered. Look at this scum. I'm only a few feet away from him, and there isn't even an ounce of fear in his eyes. Mono snorted at Quinn before him. I can't wait for the next year, so we can get rid of these wastes, so only the strong survive. Quinn's blood started to boil. He despised the war, as it had taken everything away from him, including his parents. He no longer cared if he was going to take a beating or not. All he wanted to do was punch Mono in the face right there and then. Unable to hold his anger in any longer, he threw out a punch. Alas, Mono appeared to have been able to protect his action. Before Quinn had even begun his attack, the older student had taken a step back, making Quinn's fist hit nothing but air. Borden took this chance to try and grab onto Mono. However, once again Mono had reacted in advance, resulting in Borden grabbing nothing. You think I'm going to let someone touch me whose ability I don't even know? Mono sneered at them in derision. I didn't come here to fight you guys. Consider today to be a friendly warning. There are people in this school that not even the military can touch, and if you continue acting this way, they will get involved. With that, Mono headed back up the stairs and into the second-year building. Do you think he's serious? Peter asked. I know at school they didn't like this type of stuff, but it seems even worse now that we're in a military school. Why don't the teachers do something to stop it? Because it works in their favor, Quinn sighed. With the strong bullying the weak, the latter will try to find a way to become strong themselves. However, if you're weak to begin with and can't rely on your family to help you, where can you go to get this power? The military, Borden answered in Peter's stead. Exactly, Quinn nodded his head. The teachers and the school don't do anything against it because it benefits them. After experiencing hell for 2 years, your mind will likely have been broken down. In that state, you might do anything to seek power and protection, and the military can offer that for you. Quinn then looked at Borden and sighed. I'm sorry, Borden, but I think it might be for the best if we comply with their wishes and go our separate ways for now. Why should I listen to them? Borden snapped back. The outburst surprised Quinn. After all, Vorden stood to gain the most from that. He was strong, so nobody would bother. Look, Vorden, I assume you think you're helping me and Peter, but maybe you don't understand because you've never been powerless like us. When we break their rules, they probably won't do anything to you. It will be me and Peter they will go for. Quinn hated saying that to Vorden, especially since he was the first high-level person who didn't look at them like scum, judging them solely by their power level numbers. Earlier, when Quinn and Peter had walked around with him, the higher levels had done nothing to them because of Vorden. Unfortunately, his behavior had attracted bigger fish, something that Vorden and Quinn couldn't handle. At least, not yet anyway. Fine, have it your way, Vorden shouted as he angrily stormed off back to the dorm building. Maybe we should have explained it to him better, Peter noted in a low voice. It's fine, it might be better this way, Quinn sighed in defeat. Vorden was angry, but not at Quinn's words. No, he was pissed off at the whole situation at the school. It seemed that even here, people were dictating how he should live his life, who he could and who he couldn't hang out with. Still, Vorden didn't want Quinn and Peter to get hurt, so he regretfully accepted this as the right choice. Nevertheless, Vorden wasn't going to just let these people get away with trying to control his life. No, he was going to go after them all. Episode 15, Finding My Next Target. Layla had been tracking Quinn and the others for a while now. From afar, she had been watching their encounter with Mono. It was kind of amazing how much attention Quinn managed to attract in a single day. The only thing that Layla was confused about was why Quinn's punch had been so slow and weak. From the looks of things, Quinn had really wanted to punch that second-year bully. So why had his attack lacked the power she had seen him exhibit at the training center? After Vorden had stormed off, Peter and Quinn decided that it would be best to head back to class for their next lesson. Just before they got back to the first-year building, they came upon a group of first-year students standing in front of the staircase. What are we going to do? Dan asked for 50 credits by the end of this week, one of the boys asked his two friends. Their wristwatches showed numbers ranging from 2 to 2.5. I don't know, not like we can resist him. He's picking on us just because we're weaker than him, his friend lamented. Credits were the school's and city's currency system. There were restaurants and shops and even fun activities and games to play all around the city. However, they cost credits. The military school didn't want their students to starve, so all 3 meals were free while at the school. Additionally, each student received a daily amount of 10 credits, which was automatically sent to their wristwatch. It was possible for students to earn more credits for rewards, usually by performing well on missions or school activities. Of course, there was also the possibility of more dubious means. Wait, stop right there, you two. One of the boys suddenly shouted at the duo who had been about to pass them. Peter stopped immediately, while Quinn carried on walking. Hey, didn't you hear me? I said stop, the same boy shouted again. His friend, catching the drift, got in front of Quinn and pushed him back to where Peter was standing. Quinn had hoped they would be safe for a little while, at least until he was out of the sun. If only he got inside the building, then he would stand a fighting chance. I think I might just have solved our credits problem, the first boy said, grinning. Lucky us to meet some of the few level 1s in this whole school. Hand over 10 credits each, and we'll let you head inside. But that's all the credits we have, Peter complained. Look, I don't want to do this, but if I don't, then my arse gets beat. If you're unhappy, complain to the guy who made us do this. Hand over the credits, now. Peter looked at Quinn with some slight hope in his eyes, perhaps thinking that his friend might be able to do something like last time. Unfortunately, after trying to hit Mono, he knew better than to try and fight them. Besides, they were level 2s. Even at full strength, he was unsure if he could beat them. Fighting them as he was would just result in a beating, so if there was the opportunity to skip that part by paying them off, then that was the best course of action. Just when Quinn received another system message. An enemy ability user has been detected. You have received a new quest. Second fight, defeat the student known as Riley. Reward, 50 EXP. A power level difference of 1 has been detected. Additional EXP will be rewarded. Now that fighting them involved EXP and the potential to level up, a confrontation with them started to become really attractive. Still, Quinn wouldn't let his greed win him over. Currently, there were 3 level 2 ability users in front of him, but the system had only asked him to defeat one of them. The first thing Quinn needed to do was get inside so he could use his inspect skill and find out which one was named Riley. Using it outside, it would only appear as a blur. For now, Quinn decided to hand over the 10 credits. He placed his watch on the other boys and the credits got transferred over. Peter ended up doing the same, and the two of them were allowed to enter the building. "Hey, that was a great idea, man," one of the boys praised his buddy. "Should we just stay out here until we find someone weaker again?" "Oh, come on," Quinn thought. He had been sure that after paying them, the trio would enter the building, but now they planned to stay outside waiting for more victims. He suddenly stopped and turned around. "Oi, what are you looking at me like that? Scram unless you want an ass kicking," one of the boys yelled at Quinn when he saw his gaze. Quinn clenched his fist and shouted, "Riley!" Unfortunately, the other two boys also turned their heads, but none one of them said anything else. "Damn," Quinn cursed when he realized that finding out which one was Riley might be harder than he had imagined. However, he still had more aces up his sleeves. "If you pull this sort of thing again on me, Riley, you're dead," Quinn said, and gestured with his hand a cutthroat. The boy with red hair in the center moved forward, and his face was slowly starting to match his hair. "What the hell did you say to me, you little punk? Have you completely lost your mind?" He aggressively moved towards Quinn, ready to punch him in the face. "Run!" Quinn shouted towards Peter. Like a bolt of lightning, the two friends ran as fast as they could to their next class. "What did you do that for?" Peter asked while running. "I felt bad just giving them the credits, so I wanted to at least annoy them a little as payback," Quinn lied. Peter couldn't help but think Quinn had to be a little mad, yet he liked the fact that his new friend didn't seem to take crap from people, even when they were stronger than him. Admiration mixed with incredulity started to appear in his eyes when he looked at the other. Just outside their class, before they moved in, Quinn popped open his quest menu. To his delight, he discovered that although he was away from Riley, the quest remained active, indicating that he could get the EXP at any time, as long as he could beat the other. At least, he now knew which one Riley was, so he only had to wait for the right opportunity. "You're going to help me level up," he mumbled to himself with a grin. Episode 16. A New Look. Since it was the first official day, most of the classes had been introductions about what they would learn during their time at military school. Peter and Quinn had done their best to avoid most other students after everything they had been through. Fortunately, luck finally had smiled upon them, and nobody had troubled them. Once classes had finished, it was time to go for dinner. Quinn noticed he still had this pang of hunger in his stomach, so he was looking forward to dinner with enthusiasm. This time, Quinn and Peter both sat on their own at a table in the low-level area. Peter started to look around the room as if he was trying to spot someone. "I don't see Vorden anywhere. You think he's okay?" Peter asked, some worry in his voice. Quinn's eyes, which had been focused on his meal so far, roamed around the room as well, yet he too was unable to find Vorden at the canteen. "I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think we both know that he is a lot safer than us at this school," Quinn reminded Peter. The two continued to eat, and once they finished dinner, they decided to head back to their dorm room. To their surprise, Vorden was already in the dorm room, lying on his own bed. When the two of them closed the door behind them, Vorden lifted his head and smiled at Peter and Quinn like usual, as if the whole episode with him leaving them in the hallway in anger had never happened. "Hey, I've been waiting for you two for a while now," Vorden said as he got off his bed. "I wanted to apologize for earlier. I wasn't angry, you guys, but just at this whole situation." When Vorden got up from the bed, Quinn noticed a bruise on the side of their friend's face. It was slightly red and a little swollen. "What happened to your face?" Peter asked. "Oh, this?" Vorden touched the marking. "I got into a little scuffle of my own, but don't worry, I didn't lose. You don't have to worry about me, I'm strong." He flexed his muscles as if to stress his point. A loud growling noise escaped from Quinn's stomach, shifting the topic. Peter and Vorden immediately looked at Quinn, whose face had gone red with embarrassment, before all three boys broke out in laughter. "Sorry, I guess I'm still hungry after dinner," Quinn explained, his head behind his arms, trying to hide behind them. "Why don't you grab something from the convenience store? It's not too far away," Vorden suggested. Quinn looked at his watch and disappointment replaced embarrassment. Although he would have liked to buy himself a snack, he had no credits after their earlier encounter. Before he could even say anything, Borden had come over and tapped his watch against Quinn's. Transfer of 10 credits successful, the notification sounded. Don't refuse, man, just take it as my apology and go grab something, Borden insisted with a smile. Thanks. Quinn left Peter and Borden on their own and rushed off to the convenience store. It wasn't too far away from military school, just 20 minutes by foot at a normal tempo. At the front of the school was a huge gate that had 2 guards standing at the entrance at all times. Only students, teachers, and certain military personnel were allowed on the school grounds. Anytime a student wanted to leave, they had to show their wristwatch to the guard, and the same procedure was followed upon entering. Once past the gates, Quinn decided to test out how much 10 stamina points really were. It had already turned dark, and the sun was nowhere to be seen. He started to jog at a relatively fast pace to the convenience store. After running for about 5 minutes, he happily noted that he wasn't out of breath like he usually would be. He decided to run even faster, eventually reaching the convenience store in 7 minutes. Impressive, Quinn thought. He had run over 1 kilometer in just under 5 minutes, and he was not out of breath. He realized that his body had changed. He no longer had the weak body he used to have, but the body of an athlete. Another thing he noticed while running at night, he could see everything very clearly. Even when there were no streetlights, it was as if the moon had lightened everything up. A type of night vision of sorts. Your hunger grows slightly? I know, annoyed Quinn waved it away. I will deal with that in a moment. Once Quinn entered the convenience store, he grabbed a few of his favorite snacks. Some late-night ice cream and potato chips. That was when he suddenly spotted Riley and his friends in the same store just down another aisle. He ducked down quietly and waited for them to finish shopping before deciding on his next course of action. Here, I thought I would have to track him down, but it seems like he's come right to me. As he waited, he looked around him, only to notice that next to him were a lot of masks. There was one in particular that stood out to him. It was a fully black mask that covered the top half of the face, only leaving the mouth open. Across the mask was a very realistic blood splatter design. Quinn waited until he heard Riley and the others leave the store. Then he grabbed the mask and snacks and placed them on the counter. Ironically, while Quinn had been busy stalking Riley and his friends, he completely ignored the only other person in the store, Layla. What the? We're months away from Halloween, so what is he doing buying a mask like that? She thought to herself. She decided to continue to follow Quinn and see what he was up to. Hey, we're going to just shoot some hoops in the park. You want to join? One of the boys asked Riley. Nah, you know my ability is useless for playing games like that, Riley replied. I think I'll just head back and wait by the school gate, see if there are any more suckers I can leave some credits from. The other 2 boys looked at each other. They felt guilty, aware that what they were doing was morally wrong. Still, they told themselves that they were merely doing it because they themselves didn't want to get beaten up by a higher power level. While this might have been true for 2 of them, Riley had started to gain pleasure from bullying those weaker than him. Riley started to head back to school and passed through a small park on the way back. The area was completely void of people at this time and had very little lighting. There were also plenty of trees for Quinn to hide behind. It's showtime. Quinn hyped himself up as he put on the mask. Episode 17, Level Up. Quinn continued to follow Riley through the woody area of the park, waiting for him to get a good spot before ambushing him. It was mostly dark outside and the only visible light in the area was coming from either the moon or the single street lamp. Making sure that nobody else was around, he got ready to strike. Even if he spots me now, he won't know who to come back to for revenge, he reassured himself, adrenaline pumping through his veins. Riley, oblivious to the fact that he had company, went through the information on his watch. The glowing light displayed his total of 80 credits. I'm a genius. I don't know why I didn't do this sooner, he thought to himself. With this much, I have more than enough to pay off Dan, while keeping some for myself. And as long as I stay on Dan's good side, no one will try to attack me. Riley was still lost in his daydream when out of nowhere something hit him from the side. He felt the impact on his face and staggered to the floor, holding his chin. When he looked up from where he had fallen, he saw the silhouette of a boy standing over him with a horrifying mask. Under the moonlight, it looked like real blood, making Riley panicked. "Whoa, what the heck? Who are you?" Riley shouted, his voice shaking. Quinn would be stupid to answer this question. He wanted to finish the fight fast. He ran up to Riley and threw another kick. Alas, this time Riley was prepared and lifted his hands, managing to block the kick. What's worse, when Quinn's leg hit Riley's hands, it felt as if he had kicked against solid rock. "God damn it!" Quinn cursed as he quickly leaped backward. He lifted his trousers and saw his leg was badly hurt. It looked like his bones had even bent in slightly. "What?" Riley was confused as he watched his attacker fall back. Then the boy spotted his attacker's glowing wristwatch, which lit up brightly in the dark, displayed the number 1. Riley started to laugh, convinced of his superiority. "You must be one of the students I took credits from earlier. Let me guess, you thought you could get some revenge, huh? Nice try, but that's all it was." Quinn quickly used his inspect skill on his opponent. Name, Riley Blade. Race, human. Ability, hardening. HP, 8 of 10. Blood type, B+. Damn it, no wonder my leg felt like it hit a rock. Although Quinn's initial surprise attack hadn't been enough, he still felt like he could win this fight. He charged in once again, this time throwing a fist. The attack was faster than Riley had expected, not giving him time to use his hardening skill, and therefore taking the blow right in the face. Riley staggered back, nursing a broken tooth. The punch was hard, and he was beginning to doubt the validity of his attacker's wristwatch. Quinn threw another punch with his other hand, but Riley had predicted this, and had managed to harden his face in time. When the fist hit the hardened face, once again Quinn felt like he was hitting a rock. "Your fist is broken. 7 of 10 HP. Quinn screamed in pain and stepped back, creating some distance between the two. "Damn, what am I meant to do if he keeps hardening his body?" Quinn was getting desperate. However, soon enough another thought came to mind. If Riley was able to harden his body, then why didn't he keep it hardened all the time? If he had, then Quinn's first attack wouldn't have gone through. Either it took up too much energy, or he simply was unable to. Given his level 2.5 ability, Quinn was willing to bet that it was the latter. Most likely Riley was only able to harden a single part of his body at a time. It was just a theory, but Quinn had nothing to lose, and this gave him a plan. He ran forward at Riley once more, shouting, "I'm going to punch that ugly face of yours, even if it's the last thing I do." Riley hardened his face and was ready to laugh at his attacker once again, ending up hurting himself. But at the last second, Quinn changed his punch into a kick, aimed at the boy's unprotected stomach. It worked, Quinn thought as the other bent over in pain. Next, he feigned a knee towards Riley's stomach, only to end up punching him on the back of the head. Receiving the attack, Riley lay on the ground defenseless. With one last fast, swift attack to the back of his head, the red-haired boy got knocked out. Second fight has been completed. 50 EXP received. Additional reward 20 EXP received. 100 of 100 EXP. You have reached the maximum amount of EXP. Would you like to level up? Would I like to level up? Why even bother asking? Quinn wondered what possible reason he might have to not immediately accept. Once you have leveled up, any changes will be irreversible. Not heeding the warning, Quinn shouted out, "Who cares? Yes! Congratulations, you are now level 2. Evolution process has started." Evolution? What the fuck? His euphoria from a moment ago had instantly vanished, replaced with a large stabbing pain in his heart. The organ started to beat faster than it had ever done before, the blood rushing through his veins all over his body. The excruciating pain was too much for him. Falling on his knees, he tried his best to refrain from screaming, afraid he might alarm someone. The pain continued to spread throughout his body. He was so focused on that feeling that he failed to notice that his broken hand was healing alongside his leg, his full attention on the sharp stabbing pain, now in his teeth. To Quinn, the torturous experience had lasted a lifetime, yet in reality only 5 minutes passed before a new notification appeared before him. Congratulations, you have successfully evolved. You are now a halfling. Quinn stared at the words the system was showing him, unable to make sense of them. He had never heard of the term halfling before, and apparently the process was irreversible. Before he could spend any more time on it, even more messages appeared. Your stats have increased. Skill unlocked. Level 1, Blood Swipe. Blood Swipe. The skill has a range of 5 meters. It will fire out a red line of energy from the user's hands. To use the skill, the user must use their own blood, causing -1 HP per blood swipe. He had no time to check his new stats, as yet another message showed itself, this one bolder than the previous ones. It drove Quinn into a state of shock. Your hunger grows. You can no longer suppress your need for blood. Your HP will decrease by -1 HP every hour until you have consumed human blood. Episode 18. I'm a Vampire. Quinn staggered where he stood, unable to take everything in. He couldn't believe what he was reading right now. After seeing that last message, there was only one thing that came into his head. Have I become a vampire? He mumbled to himself. On the ground, Kylie stirred. No matter how hard he tried to ignore it, this message made it clear. The truth had been staring him in the face long enough. All the science had been there. The book about vampires granting him EXP, growing weaker when hit by sunlight, the constant hunger, the clear night vision, and the way the blood of his first victim had been enticing him to consume it. Quinn was not sure he could do what the system was demanding of him. There was this moral binding, his last shred of humanity that held him back from completely turning into a beast. He stood there looking down at Riley, who had passed out on the ground. It was the perfect opportunity for him to do as the system demanded. He gulped his saliva down as spit was starting to fill his mouth. Something was drawing him to Riley's body. He could smell his victim's blood. He could hear the beating heart. Without realizing it, he bent towards Riley and could see his pulse beating through his neck, the blood flowing through his veins. The smell of blood from the chipped-off tooth was strong and intoxicating. You have received an optional quest. Drink the blood of your victim to absorb a stat point. There were many questions on Quinn's mind. Questions he was unsure about and had no answers. How much blood was he supposed to consume? Would Riley die if he did this? Would he perhaps turn and become another vampire like him? Layla had continued to watch Quinn ever since he had left the convenience store. When she had seen him follow after Riley in donning the mask, she had understood what he was about to do. She had kept a safe distance while staying in between the trees to avoid detection. It had worked perfectly, allowing her to watch the whole thing unfold. Although Quinn's ambush had failed, he had nevertheless managed to win over his opponent by tricking him. However, everything after that had been completely strange. Out of nowhere, Quinn at first grabbed his chest, then his stomach, before going down to his knees. The expression on his face showing the great pain he was suddenly under. Layla had debated whether to run or help him, but had been unable to reach a decision. Eventually, the 5 minutes were over, and Quinn had looked to have regained his composure. The next second, she saw Quinn lift Riley's body slightly off the floor while kneeling beside the unconscious boy. Yet, the gaze he was looking at him was very strange. It wasn't the gloating type of look of a winner over a loser. What the? Layla wondered. He can't be planning to kiss him. What is wrong with this guy? The next moment, Quinn placed the unconscious body back down. Unable to come to a decision, his mind continued to go back and forth. Damn it. In the movies it looks so easy. Just the idea of sticking my teeth into someone. I just can't do it. Well, maybe I don't have to. I could just make a small cut on his arm and lick it. Perhaps that will do. He was mumbling to himself like a madman. Trying to confirm if what she was seeing was real, Layla started to slowly creep about closer through the bushes and trees. Then suddenly, her foot had landed on a small twig, and a snapping sound was heard. What was that? Quinn thought as he turned and looked around, but could see no one. However, in a panic that someone was coming his way and would fight him, he left the body where it was and headed back to school. Layla was unaware of the small twig she had stepped on and snapped. She hadn't even heard the sound herself. In her eyes, she just saw Quinn suddenly leave. I wonder what that was all about. In the end, he didn't do anything. Layla was curious what the point of him at the end had been. Quinn hurried head back to school and placed the mask into a shopping bag. He noticed that the ice cream he had bought had already melted, but for some reason when he looked at it, it no longer looked so appetizing. There was a hunger in his stomach that he felt couldn't be satisfied with food, and he wondered just how long he would be able to hold it in. When Quinn had finally arrived back at the school, he decided to stop by the toilet first. He was taking a good look in the mirror to see if there were any noticeable changes, but his outward appearance looked the same as before. He even lifted up his lips so he could get a better view of his teeth, but they too were just the same. Phew, at least it looks like no one will be able to tell, but why did I feel that pain in my teeth at the time then? Quinn then decided to open his status screen to see if his stats had changed after evolving. Name, Quinn Talon. Race, Halfling. HP, 15 of 15. Experience 50 of 200. Strength 10. Agility 10. Stamina 10. Status points available 1. From what he could see, merely his HP had increased by 50%, while everything else had remained the same. To be honest, Quinn was pretty bummed out about that, expecting more from something called an evolution. Still, at least his level up appeared to have granted him a single status point. When Quinn pressed on the system, it allowed him to increase either his strength, agility, or stamina by 1 point. Quinn thought about it for a while and decided to add a point to his agility. Agility 11. Quinn had considered increasing his strength in case he met more people like Riley, but he had concluded that he could overcome that problem with a good beast weapon. It would therefore be wasting his stat point. As such, what he wanted right now was to become fast and agile like an assassin. Quinn wondered if there was a reason why the system had only given him 1 point, but then he recalled the optional quests it had offered him. So far, Quinn would have been able to gain an additional 2 stat points, whereas leveling up only granted a single one. If he wanted to get stronger fast, then that would be the quickest way. However, Quinn was unsure of whether or not he would be able to go through with it. At first, he would like to do more research into the system and see if there was anything he could find out about it. He had a direction now and knew his system was similar to that of a vampire. Perhaps if he learned more about them, he would be able to figure out if there was a way around drinking the blood as well. With that in mind, Quinn decided to head to his room where he could hear Vorden and Peter practicing together. Peter was trying his best to learn the ability book the military had given him, while Vorden was tutoring him. "What took you so long?" Vorden greeted him with a question. "We were starting to get worried you might have gotten lost." "No, I just went exploring the city a little," Quinn told a white lie. "I'm a bit tired, so I think I'm going to bed early today." "Maybe we should call it a day for now as well?" Peter suggested, visibly exhausted. Not wanting to push him, Vorden agreed, and with that, the group turned off the lights and went to sleep. Although Quinn had been the one to suggest going to sleep, he was unable to. His stomach was in a tremendous amount of pain, and he had too much on his mind. If what the message had claimed would be true, Quinn only had a limited amount of time to solve his problem. However, there was nothing he could do. The school's curfew began at 10 p.m., and if you were caught outside after that, major punishments awaited. With no other choice, he closed his eyes, hoping to deal with his problems in the morning. Eventually, he managed to drift off to sleep. When he woke up the next day, the pain was worse than before. His head was pounding, and the first thing Quinn did was open up his system. 10 hours have passed. Your hunger grows. You have lost -10 HP. HP 5 of 15. Your HP will continue to decrease every hour. Episode 19. Running out of time. Even though Quinn had lost 2/3 of his HP, it strangely didn't feel like he was hurt or dying. It was different from when he was out in the sun. Instead, it felt like all his senses were on high alert. "Hey, Quinn, you alright, man?" Vorden asked, seeing Quinn's face. "Yeah, I just got to go somewhere." Quinn excused himself as he rushed out of the room, heading down to the canteen. Everything that had happened so far had been a miscalculation on Quinn's part. Although the system had warned him about his 1 HP loss every hour, he hadn't expected his body to react like that. In fact, he had only planned to sleep for 5 hours. That way he would have nearly half a day to come up with a plan how to rid himself of his problem, ideally before morning classes started. Quinn started to calculate how much time he had left. Breakfast was mandatory and lasted from 8 till 9, followed by classes that would last until noon. Their break was merely to get from class to lunch. In other words, for the next 4 hours, he was required to be somewhere in the school. Of course, there was always the option of skipping. However, this wasn't a regular school. The army would severely punish him and hunt him down if he behaved like a troublemaker. However, did that really matter if he was going to die anyway? Quinn made his way to the canteen queue to be served some food. He was taking in deep breaths, slowly, an action that was supposed to help him get the hang of his heightened senses. Right now, he was able to hear the conversation from the other side of the room. Pots and pans clanging in the kitchen as if they were next to him. Slowly, Quinn was figuring out how to ignore all those sounds, clearing his mind. Just then, Riley entered the canteen. Surprisingly, he had no bruises on his body from yesterday's fight. The only possibility was that he had made a full recovery at the medical center. Nevertheless, he looked like he was in a terrible mood after that experience. Ironically, as soon as he saw Quinn, he decided to have found the perfect target to take out all his pent-up frustration on. Riley walked past all the level 1s that were in the queue until he eventually reached the spot where Quinn was standing. "Hey Pipsqueak, you got a problem if I cut in front of you?" Riley asked as a clear provocation. However, Quinn was too busy trying to isolate the sounds from his mind to pay attention to him. "I'm talking to you," Riley said, this time louder, and looked at Quinn's wristwatch. Seeing the number 1 shine brightly on it brought back bad memories of the night before. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Riley shouted as he grabbed Quinn by the collar. In that instant, Riley's face was incredibly close to his. Just like yesterday, he could hear Riley's heartbeat. He could feel the blood flowing through his arm and muscles lifting his shirt. Something took over Quinn's body, and he immediately hit Riley's arm away and pounced on him, causing the two of them to fall to the ground. Quinn was now on top of Riley and had both his hands pinned down. "Get off me, you crazy animal!" Riley screamed, but when Riley tried to overpower Quinn and lift his hands, it was impossible. His ability to harden his skin was useless in this kind of situation. Then, Quinn started to feel something growing in his mouth. Quinn placed his head just a few inches away from Riley's neck and got ready to bite in. Just as he opened his mouth, though, he felt someone pull him by the back of his collar and chucked him off Riley towards the people in the queue. "Don't touch one of my boys," the newcomer said. Dan was a large teenager with a muscular build. His appearance was more like that of a bald adult. "Dan, thank you so much." Riley bowed as he stood up from the ground, sweating. "You're dead now, boy." As soon as Dan took one step forward, though, Borden stepped in front of Quinn with Peter. "Do you really want to cause a problem?" Borden asked, lifting his arm to show the power level of his wristwatch. In reality, Borden was only bluffing. Borden's power very much depended on what ability he copied, and right now all he had access to was Peter's level 1 Earth ability. If they were to get into a fight here, there was no contest on who would win. Fortunately, Borden's plan succeeded, as Dan decided to back down after seeing the number 5, taking Riley with him. Before Riley walked off, he mimicked Quinn's action of imitating someone, cutting his head off. "Oh, thank God, I can't believe that worked," Peter sighed, aware of Borden's secret. After the canteen incident was over, something became clear to Quinn. The teachers wouldn't step in no matter what happened. In the canteen, there were many guards standing in each corner of the room, but not a single one had done anything to help. After the group finished eating, it was time for them to go to their morning classes. Quinn was unable to concentrate on anything. All he could do was try to calm himself down while in the middle of class and watch his HP slowly tick away. It was driving him insane seeing the number go down each hour, making him regret not having bitten into Riley's neck when he had the chance. By lunchtime, Quinn once again rushed off without Borden and Peter. 1 of 15 HP. What the hell is happening to me? Quinn was worried. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Each time Quinn's HP went down, it was getting harder and harder to control his own body. Sooner or later, he thought, he would go crazy. During class, he had multiple visions of tearing the place apart and ripping out the blood from his fellow students' necks to crave his desire. Without realizing where he was walking, Quinn eventually ended up in the library. In the quiet corner of the library down one of the aisles was the fiction section. "Please have something I can use," Quinn prayed as he took out fantasy book after fantasy book about vampires. In some of the books, vampires were able to live off animal blood. Unfortunately, Quinn's system had clearly stated his need for human blood. Even if that hadn't been the case, it would be next to impossible to find an animal in time. In other stories, vampires had been made responsible for raiding the hospitals for their supplies. Alas, the one in the city was heavily guarded, and he wouldn't reach it in time even if running. For the first time, Quinn could feel himself getting weaker. He sat on the floor and read one last book and found nothing of use. When he closed the book, he could see Layla standing there opposite him. "Are you okay?" Layla asked, concerned for Quinn as he was starting to look very pale. Layla bent down so she was at eye level with him and placed her hand on his forehead to check his temperature. "You're so cold. Do you want me to take you to the nurse's office?" Layla offered. Quinn hadn't heard a single word she had said. Her neck had been too mesmerizing. The urge was uncontrollable. Sighing, he pulled Layla by the arm, bringing her close to him. A A weak sorry escaped his lips as he bit into her neck. Episode 20. A Problem. As Quinn opened his mouth wide, he could feel the ends of his teeth elongate. He didn't know what had come over him. It was as if his body had just taken control and was working on instinct. His teeth quickly sunk into Layla's skin, and at the same time a gush of blood entered Quinn's mouth. Surprisingly, Layla didn't feel any pain from this. Instead, she felt pleasure. A tingling sensation ran through her body as she felt the blood rush up through and out of her neck. Even if she wanted to resist, she couldn't. The bite seemed to have a paralysis effect. Finally, Quinn's hunger was dissipating. Your hunger has decreased. Your hunger has decreased. You will no longer lose HP. Even though the messages appeared one after the other, Quinn continued to suck Layla's blood away. HP regenerating. HP regenerating. 15 of 15 HP. Only after the last message appeared did Quinn's mind fully return. Immediately he let go of Layla, causing her body to fall to the ground. What the? Quinn wondered aloud, unsure where he was. Looking around, he noticed the poor girl on the ground. Shit, did I do that? As if to answer his question, the images of what he had just done popped into his head. A positive blood type has been absorbed. You have gained 1 strength. Quinn was curious to check the message, but for now, he needed to get Layla out of the library fast. Even though they were in a quiet part of the library, there was no telling what kind of scene it would cause if somebody found the girl on the floor. Thankfully, Quinn could hear Layla breathing, so he at least wouldn't have to worry about accidentally having sucked her dry. Unfortunately, there were 2 clear bite marks on her neck that needed to be dealt with. He then lifted Layla up with his 2 hands. To his surprise, discovered she was lighter than he had imagined. Not wasting any time, he headed to the doctor's office, all the while going over what had just happened. A part of him tried to convince himself that the system might have just been playing tricks on him. Even though he could see his HP going down, he had never felt like he was going to die at any point. In fact, Quinn didn't know if going to 0 HP equaled death, but after what had happened today, he didn't want to take any chances. There were a few things Quinn needed to do. At the top of the list was to find out how frequently his body required blood. Alas, this meant he would have to once again starve his body of blood. Only this time, he would prepare blood beforehand, so he would be better prepared. But before even all that, he had another serious problem on his hands. Would Layla remember anything when she got up, or would Quinn have to convince her to keep it a secret? If others were to find out of his rare ability, it would start a bidding war between the private companies and the military. They would do anything to get their hand on such a new type of ability. Before anyone could find out about Quinn, he had to become strong enough to protect himself. While Quinn walked down the hallway, he got quite a few looks from the other students. It wasn't strange to see someone carry an injured person in the school, but it was strange for a boy to carry a girl, unless they were an item. After enduring all those strange looks, Quinn finally reached the infirmary. Inside, there was a single female doctor named Haley, who looked to be in her early 30s. She wore round glasses and had her hair up in a ponytail. Quinn never got the chance to mess around with girls while at his old school, but looking at the doctor, he couldn't help but appreciate her natural beauty. Another one? Haley sighed before pointing at the back. There's a free bed there. If you could leave her there, I will get to her as soon as I can. Quinn did as he was told, and placed Layla gently on one of the single beds in the back. The infirmary was quite large. Quinn had never seen a school have one so big. There were a total of 30 beds, yet as far as he could see, Haley appeared to be the only one working there. At the moment, about half the beds were filled up with students, and Quinn couldn't help but notice most of them were low levels. There were the odd high levels as well. Even they got into their own fights and disagreements. Haley came over to where Quinn and Layla were and started to examine Layla. She placed her hand around her wrist and did a few other checks. That's when she noticed the 2 small holes on her neck. What happened? Haley asked, clearly concerned. I'm not sure. I was in the library when I saw her on the ground like that, Quinn replied. Classes ended not too long ago, so it can't have been too long since she passed out, yet the wound on her neck looks like it's already healing on its own. Haley noted while writing down her analysis. Still, I can't be sure if it will heal, and it would be a shame if a pretty girl like her ended up with a scar. Haley then placed her hand on Layla's neck, where the bite marks were. She closed her eyes and after a few seconds, lifted her hands and the bite marks had vanished. "Is it okay if I wait here for her?" Gwen asked. "Oh, young kids these days," Haley grinned. "She's lucky to have someone as caring as you by her side." No, Gwen waved his arms to stress his point. "We're just friends, that's all." Haley gave him a strange look, seemingly doubting his declaration, but there were other students she had to attend to. After Haley had gone away to look after other students, Quinn decided to open up his status screen. Strength, 11. Agility, 11. Stamina, 10. So it really did give me an extra stat point after all. He was unsure how exactly sucking someone's blood strengthened him, but he decided not to question it too much. Interestingly, Quinn had received 2 optional quests to suck the blood of those he had defeated. He had assumed that the stat point was like an extra reward for winning a fight, but it appeared like there was no actual need to fight against someone first. In that case, Quinn was theoretically able to drink anyone's blood to gain stat points. However, what would happen if he drank Layla's blood again? Would he gain another stat? There were so many questions Quinn had no answers to. He looked at Layla lying there peacefully. Right now, he was in complete control over his body, and there was no urge for him to suck on Layla's neck again. After checking his teeth, he was thankful that they had gone back to normal. That's when Quinn decided to look around the room until he finally found what he was looking for, a syringe with a needle. Quinn looked around the room and Haley appeared to be busy dealing with another student. He carefully took the syringe and hid it behind his back, and then quickly scooted over to where Layla was once more. "I'm really sorry about this, Layla," Quinn apologized to the girl, "but you're going to have to be my guinea pig." Quinn took out the syringe and carefully looked at where Layla's veins were. Luckily, Layla was quite pale, making her veins more visible. He carefully searched for the right spot, and just when he was ready to extract some blood, he heard someone crash into the room. "Is Quinn here?" a panicked boy's voice asked. "Why is Peter here?" Quinn immediately put the syringe into one of his trouser pockets and came to see what his friend wanted. "Quinn, thank God you're here. Quick, I've been looking everywhere for you. It's Borden, he's in trouble."